So here we are continuing, and the next guy we will cover is this projector guy. Actually, to explain this, I have to walk you through this projection type of the material. So let's apply that material, and we will give it a checkerboard shader. Probably you saw in many tutorials that people use this checkerboard shader, and there is a really good reason for it. And the reason is it has maximum white and black values. There is a nice equality. So the polygon sizes are, the UV polygon sizes are generally equal. And you can really quickly see if there is some distortion or washing out. And you can nicely see how that projection type works. And let me show you what types of projections we have in Cinema 4D. Whenever you create a primitive object or a polygon object inside Cinema 4D, it gets this UVW tag. And this, under this texture tag, you can actually see how the image, how the texture, the material or the shader is projected, applied to the surface of the object. And currently we are in UVW mapping mode, and let me show you, for example, a spherical projection. And seemingly there is a small change. In Cinema 4D you can actually manipulate those projections and really scale and move and rotate your texture just to fit it as exactly as you want on your object. And you can find that texture tool here. If you enable it, you will see something happening when you select the object you want to manipulate. Okay, so now we have a yellow wireframe sphere around our object. And if we start to play around with it, we will see a change. And this yellow wireframe sphere is actually your material. And that wireframe sphere explains how that image or a shader, in this case the checkerboard shader, will be projected to the surface. And currently it's projecting it in circular manner. Let me use something else, for example cylindrical, and you will see a change. Now it's really easy to grasp. For example, I can play around with only one scale and you will see immediately the effect. Let me undo that, maybe scale it all at once. And you will see how projection is changing, how those checkerboard patterns are distributed differently on the sphere. And you can think of these projection types as a helper tool. It will help you to define the initial projection for your object. So for example, if you're building a cylinder, then the most logical selection here would be cylindrical. Select, for example, a flat one. And now this texture is applied to this object in a planar direction. So it may seem that it is applied from camera view, but it is not. It's projected planarly to this surface. We can, for example, now select cubic, and what this will actually do, let me create a cube and you will see what it exactly does. Simple cube, scale it down a bit, something like this, and pull it up so we can see it. And if I apply this material to this cube now, we pull it just a bit away so you can actually see the light that will light up this part, and put a cubic projection here. And now the texture will be applied 6 times, exactly the same on each side of this cube. Okay? So think of it as a redistribution projections. So it will distribute everything from 6 directions to your object. Okay? I'm really trying to simplify this to get you really inside it as quickly as I can without complicating unnecessarily, of course. Let's check this next one. And this frontal projection is really simple. If I move my scene, you will see that this texture is always applied in the same manner. It will always apply it frontally. Okay? Just try it out. It will make sense much more. The spatial is somewhat similar to that cubic projection we talked about, but the difference is it will, after it passes that frontal part, let's say it will go left and up and it will distort in some direction. Let's check the next one. And here we have the shrink wrapping. And the shrink wrapping works something like the center of the texture will be positioned exactly on the north pole of the object, and it will be shrink wrapped all the way to the south pole. The advantage of this is that you will have no visible seams or breaks or places where the texture meets, so you will obviously see a connection point. I really hope I'm making this easy to follow. And also we have a camera mapping, and really for this to work you have to have a camera. So let's create one camera and activate it by clicking this little guy here, this little gizmo. And now we are actually using this camera as our camera, and you can tell that by these orange dots here. You're not using editor camera anymore. And simply what you want to do is you want to drop this camera here under camera, and you will see instantly a change. So now that texture is applied from the camera onto the object. Okay? There is a lot more expanded functionality of that with projection method, but that would be a complete tutorial set for itself. So when and where to use which projection? The advantage of using this UVW mapping is if you select a point here and move it, the texture will scale with it. And if you, for example, use another mode, something like frontal, the texture won't scale with it. You see that? So use these other projections as initial projections when you are building something, so to get a roughly good and decent representation. But if your object is going to be a little bit more complicated, then always select this UVW mapping and create your UVW layout in body paint. I showed in volume 1 in one of the bonus lessons how to unwrap a human head, which is a really difficult task. So when you will be able to do that, any other UV mapping task is not difficult at all. One more thing I really want to cover. So let's say you have here an image and probably want to assign that. Let me just delete this sphere. You would probably want to assign this to a plane. Currently you see it, if you render it out, it looks fairly decent. But what if you encounter a situation, you will certainly encounter this and do a, let's say, a flat projection and rotate this, something like this. So sometimes you will most certainly have to rotate the text or scale it. So let's say that you want to, or you already had texture that is scaled. You see this styling option. If I disable that, then this texture won't be tiled. Let's say that you applied a texture to an object, and instead of manually really scaling that and trying to fit that exactly in the object, there is a nice little command in Cine4D. Just select your material or right click on it and say fit to object, and that image or texture or shader will fit perfectly into that size. So let me now cover the projection shader and some other guys out there.